With the civil wars over and the Republic restored, one might have expected that everything returned to normal. The fears of a damnatio under Augustus were gone. Or was it? This was the beginning of a political struggle between the restoration of the Republic and the restoration of the domination of Augustus, but under a much subtler form than in 31 to 29 BC. After the first constitutional settlement, you see a kind of monopolization of the military by Augustus. This was vital as Rome was a militaristic society. Part of the restoration of the Republic meant that the senatorial aristocracy had the chance to compete for military honours and glory such as triumphs, ovations, and being heralded imperator. Another reward for winning a triumph was that the triumphator could construct a building in Rome. For example, Gaius Sosius constructed a temple to Apollo in the Campus Martius from 34 to 31 BC. In 29 BC, Octavian had adopted the title of imperator. He had been acclaimed by his troops as imperator 21 times. He received 2 ovations and the triple triumph in 29 BC. The Senate wanted to vote him more, but he declined them all. In 27 BC, after the first constitutional settlement, Augustus had control of the large province, including many of the areas likely to have large military actions and where most of the 28 legions were deployed. The areas under the authority of Augustus were governed by delegates appointed directly by him, known as legati. Only 2 public provinces actually had legions, Africa and Macedonia. These proconsuls were chosen from the Senate and were entirely independent of Augustus. He had no power in these provinces. Thus the ability to gain military honours outside of the sphere of Augustus was very limited, but not impossible. In 28 BC, there were 3 triumphs, one for Gaius Calvisius Sabinus's victory in Spain, and one for Gaius Caranius's victory in Gaul, the last for the proconsul of Africa, Licinius Utronius Paetus. In 27 BC, there were 2 triumphs, one for Marcus Licinius Crassus, the proconsul of Macedonia, who had won victory over the Getae, the other for Valerius Messala Corvinus and his victory in Gaul. In 26 BC, there was a single triumph in Spain for Sextus Apuleius, and then there were no more triumphs. In total, there were 4 triumphs for Augustus's legati and 2 for the senatorial proconsuls. Augustus, rather than have the triumphs himself, let his legati have them instead. Finally, in 25 BC, he put a stop to triumphs altogether, and prevented his generals from being awarded triumphs in the future. Marcus Vinicius won a victory against the Germans and had to share his being heralded imperator with Augustus, who was also acclaimed imperator. This is why Augustus was able to be acclaimed imperator 21 times, because he took the acclamations of his subordinates. Military honour had been monopolised by Augustus over his legati. Augustus was awarded the right to wear the triumphal wreath and robe on the first day of each year. Thus, this made him a kind of perpetual triumphator, and prevented others from having a triumph. The Temple of Janus in 25 BC was closed once again, signifying peace, and closing the door on private military glory. Augustus's own military record was both quite spectacular and also not so at the same time. Most of Augustus's wars had been fought against Romans, such as Sextus Pompey, Cassius and Brutus, Mark Antony, and for most of the decisive battles like Actium and Philippi, Augustus had fallen ill just before the battle and spent most of it in his bed. Marcus Agrippa had commanded at Actium. Mark Antony had commanded at Philippi, and it was Cornelius Gallus that had captured Alexandria from the Egyptians. Augustus had fought some Illyrians and conquered Egypt, or at least his lieutenant Gallus had conquered it for him. In 29 BC, Augustus sent Agrippa to finish off extending Roman dominion over all of Spain. In 26 BC, he took command himself and fought a campaign, writing a memoir about his Spanish wars, just as Julius Caesar had done. He spent most of the time ill and gave control of the war to his subordinates. The war was finished in 24 BC. It was most likely fought for propaganda reasons, to give Augustus a victory and military glory that was not extracted from the blood of his fellow countrymen. Also, economically, the Roman Empire had resources to be gained from the mines of northern Spain. In 27 BC, Crassus defeated the Bastani and killed their king Deldo in battle. He was hailed imperator and voted a triumph, and Licinius Crassus claimed the Spolia Opima. The Spolia Opima were given to a Roman commander that had managed to kill an enemy ruler in single combat in battle. You were then allowed to dedicate their armour to Jupiter. This had only been sought thrice prior to Licinius Crassus, so this was a very rare and ancient military honour. Augustus told Crassus that he could not have the Spolia Opima because he was not fighting under his own auspices, and that to claim the Spolia Opima had to be the supreme commander, in this case the consul. Livy, Roman History, Book 4, Chapter 20, 5-7 and 11. I have followed all previous chroniclers in relating that Aulus Cornelius Cossus was tribunus militum when he deposited the second Spolia Opima in the temple of Jupiter Feretrius. However, in addition to the fact that they can only properly be Spolia Opima when they are stripped by one commander from another, and we recognise as commander only the man under whose auspices the war is fought, the actual inscription on the spolia proves against these chroniclers and me that Cossus was consul when he took them. I was informed that Augustus Caesar, founder and restorer of all of our temples, entered the shrine of Jupiter Feretrius, which he had built after many years of neglect and dilapidation, and himself read the inscription on the linen corselet, and I have therefore felt that it would be almost sacrilege to deprive Cossus of so great a witness to his spoils as Caesar. Everyone is at liberty to form his own conjecture. These doubtful points, in my belief, can be made to support any opinion. The fact remains that the man who fought the battle placed the newly won spolia in the sacred shrine near Jupiter himself, to whom they were consecrated, and, with Romulus in full view, two witnesses to be dreaded by any forger, and that he described himself in the inscription as A. Cornelius Cossus, consul. So Livy confirms that Augustus was right that Crassus would have needed to be consul to dedicate the Spolia Opima. Or does he? Livy says that Cossus was tribunus militum, which is what all of his sources say. However, Livy says the dedicator of the Spolia Opima also had to be supreme commander, thus Cossus had to be a consul, which goes against what Livy's sources say and what Livy himself thought to be true. Augustus went to the temple that he himself restored, and armed with the linen corselet about the spolia from over 400 years ago, told Livy that Cossus was consul and that the spolia could not be dedicated if the Roman commander was a subordinate. So what options does this give us? Either Cossus never gave the spolia because he was not consul, the historians Livy was using and his own common knowledge were wrong, or, unthinkable as it may seem, the consul for the 8th time, Augustus, had forged the corselet. Livy inserts a subtle curse at Augustus and wishes him the ire of Jupiter and Romulus for forging the spolia corselet. This affair with the Spolia Opima Augustus's control of most of the military and monopolization of military glory show that a very important aspect of the Republic had not been restored, or certainly had only been restored to a certain amount, for the rest was in the control of Augustus himself. I have been your host, Daniel Maynard. Be sure to like, subscribe and share this video, and this has been Eastern Roman History.